The streets of London bustled with life as the evening set in. Among the crowd, a young woman stood behind a small wooden cart, arranging colorful sweets on a tray. Her name was Lily Carter, a simple, hardworking girl with a heart full of love and eyes that carried the weight of 1,000 struggles. Every day, she stood in the same spot near the park, selling homemade sweets to earn a living. But her real battle wasn't just about money. It was about survival for herself and her sick mother, who lay bedridden at home. Across the street, inside a sleek black Rolls-Royce, Alexander King adjusted the cuffs of his tailored suit. He was one of London's youngest billionaires, a man who had everything except love. His life was a routine of business meetings, luxury events, and empty conversations with people who only saw his wealth. He had long stopped believing in true love, convinced that money only attracted greed. That evening, as his car stopped at the signal, his eyes fell on Lily. There was something about her, something real. Unlike the glamorous women he met at high-end parties, she was different. Dressed in a simple floral dress with a small apron tied around her waist, she worked tirelessly, greeting each customer with a warm smile. He watched as she handed sweets to a little boy who didn't have enough money to pay. "Here, take it," she said softly, ruffling the boy's hair. "Come back when you can." Alexander raised an eyebrow. A poor street vendor, giving away sweets for free. Who did that in this cruel world? "Sir?" his driver asked, waiting for his next instruction. Alexander hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Pull over." The car smoothly parked near the sidewalk. Stepping out, Alexander walked toward Lily's cart, his polished leather shoes clicking against the pavement. As he approached, she looked up, startled by his presence. "Good evening, sir. Would you like to buy some sweets?" she asked politely, wiping her hands on a cloth. Alexander's gaze lingered on her face for a moment. She was beautiful in a simple, effortless way. Not the kind of beauty that came from expensive clothes or makeup, but the kind that radiated from within. "How much for the whole cart?" he asked, slipping his hands into his pockets. Lily blinked in surprise. I don't understand." "I want to buy everything you have," he repeated, his tone calm but firm. Lily hesitated. It was a tempting offer. Selling everything at once would mean an early night home, a chance to check on her mother without worrying about the remaining sweets. But something didn't feel right. People didn't just buy an entire cart of sweets for no reason. "I appreciate your kindness, sir, but why would you do that?" she asked cautiously. A small smirk tugged at Alexander's lips. He liked that she questioned him instead of blindly accepting the money. "Maybe I like sweets," he said lightly. Lily let out a soft chuckle. "Somehow, I doubt that." For the first time in a long time, Alexander found himself amused. He pulled out his wallet, ready to pay, but Lily stopped him. "I'll sell you as many as you want, but only if you promise to actually eat them. No wasting food." Alexander was taken aback. Nobody had ever stopped him from spending money before. His curiosity deepened. "Fine," he agreed, picking up a piece of her homemade fudge. He took a bite, and to his surprise, it was delicious, rich, soft, with just the right amount of sweetness. Lily smiled proudly. "See? Told you they're good." For the next few minutes, Alexander stood there, trying different sweets while she watched, unaware that she had already started making a place in his heart. That night, as he drove away, Alexander found himself thinking about her. The girl with the sweet smile and a heart full of kindness. And for the first time in years, he felt something real. The next morning, Lily woke up early, as she always did. The tiny apartment she shared with her mother smelled of warm bread and sugar, remnants of the sweets she had prepared late into the night. Her mother, Margaret Carter, lay in bed, her frail body covered with a thin blanket. Her once bright eyes had dulled with illness, but her smile remained as gentle as ever. "Did you sell everything yesterday, sweetheart?" Margaret asked, her voice weak but loving. Lily sat beside her, brushing back a few strands of gray hair. "Almost. I met the strangest customer," she admitted with a small laugh. "He wanted to buy the whole cart." Margaret's brows lifted in surprise. "And did you sell it to him?" "Not everything," Lily said. "I made him eat some first. What kind of person spends money like that without thinking?" Margaret chuckled softly. "Perhaps he was just kind," Lily sighed, shaking her head. "Or maybe he was just another rich man who thinks money can buy anything." Meanwhile, across the city, Alexander sat in his luxurious penthouse, still thinking about the girl with the sweet cart. He was used to people treating him differently because of his wealth. Some admired him, others envied him, and most just wanted something from him. But Lily? She had looked him in the eyes, questioned his actions, and laughed at his intentions. That intrigued him. He had meetings to attend, business deals to close, but instead, he found himself making a call. "James," he spoke to his driver, "take me back to the park this evening." By the time the sun began to set, Lily was back in her usual spot, arranging her sweets neatly, humming a soft tune. She loved this part of the day, the cool breeze, the chatter of people passing by, the laughter of children. And then she saw him, Alexander King, the same man from yesterday, walking towards her with the confidence of someone who owned the world. Except today, he wasn't in a sharp black suit. Instead, he wore a simple white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking far more casual, far more approachable. "Back again?" Lily asked, raising an eyebrow. Alexander leaned against the cart, smirking. "What can I say? I have a new addiction." She folded her arms. "Let me guess. Sweets?" He chuckled. "Not just any sweets. Yours." Lily rolled her eyes but couldn't help the small smile tugging at her lips. "You know, most people just buy what they want and go. They don't linger." "Maybe I enjoy lingering," Alexander said, his gaze locking onto hers. For a moment, Lily felt something unfamiliar, a strange fluttering in her chest, but she quickly brushed it aside. "Well, if you're staying, you're buying," she teased, handing him a small paper bag. Alexander took it without hesitation. "Then I guess I'll be here every day." And just like that, it became a routine. Every evening, Alexander would return, and Lily would pretend not to be waiting for him. They talked, sometimes about sweets, sometimes about the city, and other times about nothing at all. But those conversations became the highlight of their days. Little did Lily know, Alexander wasn't just there for the sweets. He was there for her. And little did Alexander know, he was about to fall in love with the one woman who had no idea who he really was. Days turned into weeks, and every evening, Alexander found himself standing by Lily's cart. It had become a habit, one he didn't want to break. Lily, on the other hand, still didn't know much about him. To her, he was just Alex, the strangely charming man who had an unexplained obsession with her sweets. He never talked about his job, never flaunted his wealth, never acted superior. He was just there, listening to her stories, asking about her mother, and occasionally making her laugh with his dry humor. but Alexander knew time was running out. He couldn't hide the truth forever. One evening, as he stood by the cart, watching Lily wrap up for the night, he found himself asking, "Do you ever think about doing something bigger?" Lily looked up, surprised. "Bigger?" "Yes," he said. "Opening your own bakery, perhaps." She let out a soft laugh. "A bakery? That's a dream for someone with money, Alex. I barely make enough to buy my mother's medicines. Rent is due next week, and I still don't have all of it." Alexander frowned. He had suspected things were tough for her, but hearing it out loud made his chest tighten. He could help her. With a single phone call, he could buy her a shop, hire the best chefs, and make her dream come true. But he knew Lily. She was proud, independent. She wouldn't take handouts. So instead, he asked, "What if someone wanted to invest in you?" Lily gave him a skeptical look. "And who would do that?" "Someone who believes in your talent." She shook her head, smiling softly. "You're sweet, Alex, but the world doesn't work like that. Rich people don't invest in street vendors." His heart clenched at her words. If only she knew. Before he could say anything else, Lily sighed. "But it's okay. I have my mother, my sweets, and the people who come here every day. That's enough for me." Alexander stared at her, fascinated by how different she was from the people in his world. She wasn't driven by greed or power. She found happiness in the smallest things, and without realizing it, he had fallen for her. Later that night, as he lay in his massive penthouse, staring at the city skyline, he made a decision. He was going to tell her the truth. The next evening, he arrived at the park as usual, but today he wasn't alone. His car pulled up, and his assistant, David, stepped out first, holding a small box. Lily looked up as Alexander approached, and for the first time, she noticed something different. There was an air of seriousness around him. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice softer than usual. Lily wiped her hands on her apron. "Is something wrong?" Alexander took a deep breath. "Lily, I haven't been completely honest with you." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "I'm not just Alex," he said. "My full name is Alexander King." Lily's face remained blank for a moment, and then her eyes widened. "Wait, King and Company? The billionaire?" He nodded, watching as a storm of emotions crossed her face. Shock, confusion, and something else he couldn't quite place. "I didn't mean to lie," he continued. I didn't want you to treat me differently. I wanted to know you, the real you." Lily took a shaky breath, looking away. Her mind raced. All this time, she had been talking to a billionaire? The man who stood in front of her wasn't just some random customer. He was one of the richest men in the country. It suddenly made sense. The way he carried himself, the confidence, the way he spoke like someone who was used to making decisions. But what didn't make sense was why he had spent all this time with her. She swallowed hard. "So, what now?" Alexander stepped closer. "That depends on you," he said quietly. "I want to help you, Lily. I want to invest in you, not because I feel sorry for you, but because I believe in you." Her throat tightened. This was everything she had ever wanted. A chance to change her life. A chance to give her mother a better home. But deep down, something scared her. She had grown up knowing that money changed people. Would it change them too? And more importantly, could she trust a billionaire who had kept such a big secret from her? Lily's mind was spinning. She gripped the edge of her cart, staring at Alexander like he was a stranger. "You lied to me," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Alexander's chest tightened. I never meant to hurt you, Lily. I just wanted you to know me for who I am, not what I have. She let out a shaky laugh, but there was no humor in it. Do you know what it feels like to struggle every single day, Alex? To wake up wondering if you'll have enough to feed your sick mother? To count every coin before buying medicine? Her eyes burned with unshed tears. You've been standing here all this time, pretending to understand, but you could have ended my struggles in a second. Alexander clenched his fists. He wanted to tell her that money didn't solve everything, that his life wasn't as perfect as she thought. But he knew now wasn't the time. I never saw you as a charity case, he said softly. I saw you as someone special, someone different. Lily shook her head, stepping back. And now what? You expect me to be grateful, to take your money, and fall in love with a man who hid his identity from me? Alexander's heart dropped at her words. He had expected anger, maybe even disappointment, but he hadn't expected this. Rejection. I don't expect anything, he said honestly. I just wanted you to know the truth. Lily swallowed hard, her emotions warring inside her. She wanted to trust him, but trust had never come easy in her life. I need time, she said finally. Alexander nodded, though the ache in his chest told him he might be losing her. Take all the time you need. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Lily standing there, her heart torn between anger and something dangerously close to love. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mother's soft breathing the only sound in the room. She thought about Alex, Alexander King, a billionaire, a man who could buy anything he wanted. And yet, he had spent weeks standing by her cart, eating her sweets, talking to her like she was the most important person in the world. Her heart ached with confusion. Was she just another interest in his life? A temporary fascination? Or had he really fallen for her? The next morning, she did something she never thought she would. She went to find him. Alexander sat in his office, staring blankly at the reports on his desk. He had spent the entire night wondering if he had ruined everything. Then, a knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. David, his assistant, poked his head inside. Sir, Miss Carter is here. Alexander's heart stopped. Lily? He stood immediately, his pulse racing as he rushed to meet her. She stood in the lobby of his company, looking small and out of place in her simple dress. But her eyes, those same brown eyes that had haunted him all night, held something different. Uncertainty, hope, and something that looked like forgiveness. I don't need your money, Alexander, she said the moment he reached her. His breath caught. I know. But I need to know. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. Was any of it real? He stepped closer, his voice soft but firm. Every moment. Lily searched his face for any sign of a lie, and for the first time, she let herself believe him. Maybe, just maybe, love wasn't about wealth or status. Maybe it was just about two hearts finding each other, against all odds. Next part in the next video.